Joining us now for a brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning,
and good morning, Rufai. Hey, how's everybody doing?
Doing very great. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, Ayo. Thank you for asking. Good morning to viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Let's kick things off with education. There's more than 170,000 students in England and Wales have launched legal action against dozens of universities, claiming that they paid expensive tuition fees for in-person teaching that never fully materialized when courses shifted online during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the claims, rooted in consumer law, argue that students received a service of diminished value, classroom contact, and full access to campus facilities, and they are seeking compensation of up to £5,000 each. Pre-action claim letters have already been sent to 36 universities, in England and Wales, including Bath, Bristol, Cardiff, Exeter, Imperial College London, Leeds, Liverpool and Warwick on behalf of aggrieved students. Now, it follows a settlement that came last week between UCL, that's University College London, and the student group claim, representing about 6,000 UCL students whose studies were affected by the pandemic. Now, universities say that they followed government lockdown guidance and worked to support students. But critics say that the case highlights wider questions about the value and delivery of higher education in times of crisis. Now, this issue does resonate far beyond the United Kingdom. Here in Nigeria, for example, where the pandemic did expose deep gaps in digital infrastructure and readiness for virtual learning, many Nigerian universities did struggle with online delivery due to limited broadband power and technology access. So this continues to raise questions about equity and equality in higher education. So as students worldwide demand better protections and clearer educational standards post-COVID, I guess debates now about what students pay for and what they actually get are only just beginning. We'll see what happens there. Now, staying in the United Kingdom, UK bank bosses are meeting on Thursday in order to discuss reducing reliance on foreign-owned payment giants by planning a homegrown alternative to Visa and MasterCard. So what we're seeing here is in this meeting, which is chaired by Vim Maru, who is the chief of Barclays Bank UK. He's going to be bringing together major lenders and funders, including Santander UK, NatWest, Lloyds Banking Group, Nationwide Building Society, and payment bodies Link with support from the Bank of England. All of them are going to be discussing what they are hoping to launch is a platform called Delivery Co. And this is happening amid concerns that political tensions, including threats from the United States, could disrupt critical payment networks. So essentially what they're looking for is an alternative away from Visa and MasterCard banking systems. We'll have to see what that materializes on Thursday. Now, let's move over to the Middle East now, because Iran's foreign minister, he is Abbas Araghchi, and he has arrived in Geneva earlier this week, and he did meet with the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, who you also see in those pictures, and this is ahead, of course, of the second round of indirect nuclear talks with the United States. Now, the discussions are aimed at addressing Iran's nuclear enrichment and compliance with international rules, even as regional tensions continue simmering and military drills continue in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, both sides are under pressure to avoid escalation, but despite this, US President Donald Trump had this to say about what is happening in Iran. Let's take a listen.
From these Iran talks in Geneva tomorrow.
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. I mean, it's been typically Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal.
I've been told that a deal is next to impossible.
No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
Heard what you said. I don't think they want the consequences of not reaching a deal. Let's see what happens between both sides during those talks. And staying in the Middle East, for the first time since 1967, Israel's government has approved a controversial proposal to begin registering large portions of land in the occupied West Bank as state property. Now, the announcement has triggered sharp international condemnation from the likes of Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, and Jordan. They are denouncing the measure as illegal under international law, and they continue to warn that it could accelerate settlement expansion, which we're already seeing in the occupied West Bank, and will deepen tensions with Palestinian authorities. Now, those authorities in Palestine are warning that the move does undermine the prospects of a two-state solution and amounts to essentially a mega land grab. Israeli officials say that the process is meant to clarify land rights, but not very many people are going to believe them, as you heard Rufai there. So when we're looking at this area, essentially this plan will apply primarily to what is called Area C in the West Bank. Now, it is almost under full Israeli control, and hundreds of thousands of Israeli settlers already live alongside millions of Palestinians. And it's worth noting that a lot of these settlements are already illegal. So we'll see what happens there. But those are well-briefed stories. Let's now take a look at our newspaper headlines. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. And This Day today does report that former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai has been detained by the EFCC, that's the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, over alleged corruption, abuse of office, and financial mismanagement during his tenure. Now, the report also says that the Department of State Services has also filed cybercrime charges against him, including unlawful interception of the National Security Advisor's communications. And that's while former Vice President Atiku Abubakar accused the federal government of political persecution. Meanwhile, protesters have stormed the Kaduna State House of Assembly, demanding updates on the probe into the alleged diversion of some 423 billion naira under El-Rufai's administration. So, tough times ahead for him. We're still staying with This Day, and This Day does report that there's been a committee set up by the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission. And essentially, they have recommended declaring a state of emergency in Nigeria's oil sector. And they also want a forensic audit of Nigeria's crude oil production since 2004 to be done to address alleged underreporting and in order to improve insurgency. So quite an interesting read there. And let's move on to this week's edition of The Advocate by Onikepo Braithwaite. So this week, she argues that the Senate's approval of electronic transmission of election results is largely ineffective because the process still depends on manual entry through Form EC8A, leaving loopholes for manipulation. Now, the Daily Independent this morning, the Daily Independent reports that the federal government and APC governors have donated 8 billion naira to support traders affected by the Singa Market fire in Kano State. Now, 5 billion of that 8 billion comes from the federal government, and the remaining 3 billion comes from the Progressive Governors Forum to aid recovery efforts. Taking a look at The Punch reports that Kwara and Niger State governments have agreed to strengthen joint security efforts to tackle rising terror attacks, with governors Abdulrahman Abdulrazak and Mohamed Bago pledging collaboration to protect border communities and curb any further violence. Bless you, Rufai. Now, moving on to the Daily Trust this morning. The Daily Trust does report that the United States has frozen the assets of 8 Nigerians over alleged links to Boko Haram, ISIL, and cybercrime, now blocking their properties and prohibiting financial transactions with them under counter-terrorism action. So very interesting that's happening. And we've got the New Telegraph this morning, and the New Telegraph reports that the United Kingdom will begin issuing only electronic visas to Nigerian travels from the 25th of this month, the 25th of February 2026, and that's obviously going to be replacing the physical visa documents, and it does require applicants to create a UK visas and immigration account online in order to access and prove their immigration status. Now, this move is said to make the process faster and also to avoid fraud. Well, the Vanguard this morning does stay on the topic of visa restrictions, and you've got the United States warning that visa fraud and overstays by some Nigerians could lead to stricter scrutiny for other applicants. So the US mission in Nigeria has emphasized that its visa system involves rigorous screening and has urged Nigerians to report fraudulent activities. And it says that essentially responsible travelers students, professionals and families, they do benefit from stronger compliance in these issues. Let's quickly take a look at our UK papers. We got the Times first off, and we're still talking about Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer's decision to abandon plans to delay local elections for more than 4.5 million people in the UK in May came after lawyers warned that the move could be illegal. That's according to reports by the Times. Taking a look at the Daily Express this morning, again, Sir Keir Starmer claims that he has been accused of secretly plotting to lock Britain to the European Union with his reset deal is also showing how he's not having the best time in the British media. And then lastly, on the front page of the Daily Star, its front page is dedicated to Robert Duvall, the actor star. He's an Oscar-winning actor who has died, unfortunately, at the age of 95. So those are newspaper headlines. Annual brief. Love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, a couple of things. I cannot stand the hypocrisy of Israel in all of this. It's not only the Area C they're getting into. There's a lot of illegal land that they've gotten into the West Bank. And they keep encroaching. And they're doing it by also killing the Palestinian. You will see a lot of Israeli, citizens with guns killing the Palestinian. And that's why when this war started, it only increased the killing. The war was not in the West Bank, it was in Gaza. But why did over 1,000 people die in the West Bank? Because the killing keeps continuing. And that's why I do not know the kind of deal or the cul-de-sac the people in the Middle East have put themselves in with this Abraham's Accord.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, it fends them off. You can't truly fight for the Palestinian people when you're in bed with the Americans. And that is what is happening. And Israel will continue to encroach land. Just like the phony ceasefire deal they claim they have. Ceasefire, 9 people were still killed because of last week, during this ceasefire. So they're still killing the Palestinian people. So all of this, is it because you do not have somebody to also fight for the Palestinian people? Israel has a right to exist. So does the Palestinian people have a right to exist. Indeed. So we talk about a two-state solution. Not a two-state solution. When Israel encroaches on Palestinian land and fends off the hitherto land the Palestinians have in the name of supremacy and power. And that's what's also playing out. America is talking to the Iranians. Argachi is trying to talk to them. But why are the Iranians giving a nuclear weapon? Because Israel has also got one. And in this supremacy fight, you want to reduce the power from the Iranians, you call them all sorts of names, but Israel can take this same nuclear weapon they have and with the support of America commit a lot of atrocities. Fight people in that region. Go ahead, even kill Hezbollah in Lebanon. All of this injustice continues in the world and everybody watches.
All right, let me talk about the schools, the higher education schools in the UK, following the UCL, shall I say, windfall that's happened, Justice for Lockdown Students. They have a timeline till September 2026. This is significant, by the way, because international students, not just local students, but international students in the UK contribute about £58 million per constituency in terms of economic benefit to the UK economy. Now, following the lockdown in 2020, as you already described, based on the consumer law in the UK, it is said that they didn't get value for money, especially if you look at the exorbitant amounts of money that's being expected from students. And so what they're asking for is just simple. Since we paid for a certain level of service and it wasn't given to us based on the lockdown, then we deserve a refund. Then they're talking about refunds up to the cost of £6,000, £5,000 per student.
Yes.
Now, another unique thing about the UK is where you have the win or
no win, no fee
lawyers who have taken up this case, meaning that in the event that they win, they will get 35% of the winnings from each of the students. Because there's a precedent set by UCL, it will be very difficult to see how the universities are going to wiggle their way out of paying compensation to thousands of students who are now coming out to say that they deserve a refund based on COVID lockdown. Coming back to Nigeria, very quickly, I'll touch on that, and I'm glad that you make that, comparison. Yeah. There were a number of private schools who also took on the option of private. I mean, kudos to them. There were inventions around online learnings, but there were also a number of activities that the students were prevented from. Would this ever work in Nigeria? Your guess is as good as mine. But it would be great to see how the UK, manages this under their consumer law.
Thank you, Adam.
Look at the West Bank. was under Jordanian control between 1949 and 1967.
Good.
After the Six-Day War of 1967, the Israelis seized the West Bank. But then you had the Oslo Accords, 1993, 1995. And it was that Oslo Accord between Israel and the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, that the West Bank and Gaza were divided into areas A, B, C. Area A, 18% of that Area A under the control of the Palestinian Authority. Area B, 22% of it under Israeli control, the other part of it to the Palestinian Authority. Area C, 60% of it under Israeli control. Now, as far back as 1950, the Israelis had introduced what they called absentee land law, under which they said that if you not have documents for your for your land, then of course you will forfeit it. What they are now doing is to go back to what they call re-registration. They didn't do re-registration. However, under the Jordanians, what operated was British mandate. There was registration. But after so many years of turmoil, many of the Palestinians have lost their papers. In 1994, the International Court of Justice ruled that Israel's occupation of land in the West Bank and Gaza is against international law, because what was decided under the Oslo Accord was that after 5 years, all of those areas, A, B, and C, will revert to the Palestinians. But Israel has prevented that. So what Israel is trying to do is a massive land grab, which is a violation of international law. And that is why it should be condemned, because this is a land grab operation that is completely obnoxious. Those are the issues with regard to Israel and West Bank. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adefemi.